when we talk about recovery being so long-term, this is not that struggle against sobriety this whole
Sure.
time.
Agree.
That's not what we're talking about. This truly is about learning to live life differently. Long-term recovery is about really discovering and living into the integrity of who you are. And that's a vastly different conversation.
Marnie, I don't usually do intros, but oh my gosh, you're so well known in the industry. It's almost a shame not to dive in, but the problem is you've done too many cool things for this space, and it would take the entire podcast to talk about all of the value you've added. So for those of you who are listening and want to know about what Marnie has done, I will include more of her bio in the show notes. Let's get into what they came here for, which was long-term sobriety, long-term recovery. But let's dive in. When you speak about long-term recovery, long-term sobriety, how do you frame that so people can kind of wrap their head around what's required?
I don't know that I've got a specific frame, Roland. I'm just me and I just talk. I guess I want to start saying I am a person in long-term recovery. I am 69 years old. And I have been in my own recovery from sex, love, and relationship addiction and sexual trauma since I was 35. That's a long time. And along the way, I've learned a lot of things, some of which I put into practice, some of which at different times I have not. But I've gotten passionate about this journey for the long haul. I started to say I don't consider myself an old timer. I guess I do because I'm an old lady, when I'm thinking about how old I really am. I don't feel old. I feel like a learner. I feel excited actually to be in a retirement stage. So that's interesting in terms of long-term journey. So I'm just me. I guess the other thing I really want folks to know is I for sure don't want to hold myself out as this huge paragon of perfect recovery and I've got all these answers and all this kind of stuff. Your audience is too smart for that. And I'm too smart for that. And you're too smart for that. I'm just me and I've learned some stuff and I'm glad to share it with your audience.
But I love that because I do think in my own personal recovery, I do feel as if when I first started, at least, it was spoken about like there was this precise formula and I was going to be able to get this thing out of my life and I was going to go to 6 meetings and all would be well. And then this would be a non-issue and my wife and I would sail off into the sunset happily ever after. And so I appreciate what you're saying though, Marnie, is I think anyone who claims to be an expert in this, that all the top people in the field that I know never use that word. They know how big this is. They know how complex this is. They know how individual this is. They know that this is a new field. I mean, what are we talking 40, 50 years? I mean, this is a very young approach. And so I think I appreciate you saying that because even though you've been involved in the space in a really big way, I love that you said that because I think that message needs to be said to sex addicts. This is a big, complex, unique, ever dynamic thing. As it stands today, we do not have a cookie cutter formula that will work for every single person. And so all that being said, I really appreciate your approach because this is something that needs to be hashed out, talked about. You really need to take, my stance of it at least, you really need to take the wheel of your own recovery when it comes to sexual addiction. I think if you just take I'm going to sit back and let the CSATs fix me and the meetings fix me, I think you're going to be in for a very rude awakening when you realize that recovery doesn't work that way. It's very much a individual journey, and I think you feel the same way. I mean, Marnie, I've loved my recovery. It's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I think I would have lived a fraction of my full potential had I not been discovered and been forced into all of this. So let's have this fun conversation. So where I'm gonna start off by is I want to speak to the element of this being a spectrum. You know, when you look at the American Psychological Association and they talk about the definition of process addiction recovery, which is what sex addiction is, it's defined as a slow, steady reduction in duration and frequency. I think that's very disturbing for especially the betrayed partners to hear. They want
Yeah.
it to be an on-off switch, and they want the switch to be in the off position. But that's not how it's defined in the psychological literature. And it certainly appears that that's not how it goes in long-term recovery. When you hear that definition, Marnie, what comes to mind in your own personal experience?
I think about the fact that we are never done with recovery. And recovery is very different from sobriety. Nothing good happens without sobriety, but that's the beginning point. And very often, I think, especially really driven people who want to, I'm now sober, and I've been sober for say 90 days, or maybe 6 months, or maybe, oh my gosh, a year. So now I can get back to my life. That's not what recovery is about. Recovery is about learning to do life differently. It is about so much more than checking off any boxes. It's about going deep inside yourself to get to know yourself, going deep inside the God of your understanding. Spirituality is a huge part of this, however one defines that. It's about just this constant growth that becomes just living life. And so I do think I want to have a nuance about one thing you said a couple minutes ago. I also know that for some of us, my own best thinking got me here, meaning here is not a good place. So I do need to be teachable. I do need to listen to people who are further down the road, to people who have some experience, strength, and hope for what I'm going through. And that being said, then there is also this equally important element of what you're talking about, is to take this bull by the horns and to own it. This is mine. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm committing to for me.
It's the most common. I think they talk about this in the Recovery Zone book, which is so funny. They Facing the Shadows is like the go-to book for all, but it's interesting. I'm a way more of a fan of the Recovery Zone books because, and I know they're designed for a later stage. But I found so much more value in those than I did. The Facing the Shadows book was just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I know it's, I think it's important information for some people, but it wasn't really, it didn't really move the needle for me. But the Recovery Zone book says what you just said, which was, in the grief stage, which they say lasts, between, 6 to 9 months, I think is like the range. When guys are in recovery, it's so sad when I see it happen because, and I don't want to pop their bubble, right? And I'm not trying to be negative, but I've heard guys at the 8-month mark that are like, oh man, I'm so sober. I can't imagine this ever happening to me again. Why can't my wife get over this? Because I'm cured. But I will tell you this, almost right at the 8-month mark for me, almost right at the 8-month mark, I got a craving and an urge. And I was able to not act on it. But, a couple of days later, I got it again. And so I think you bring up a good point. Sobriety and recovery are two different things. And I think if you think that you're sober and that's good enough, I think that is why we see a pretty high level of relapse in this particular field, is a lot of what caused the behaviors hasn't changed.
And hasn't been addressed.
Right. And it's always, one of my requirements for my program, I really don't like when guys are too early, because I really want them to be at a point where they understand this is you're going to be doing this for life. And so when I get guys who are a little too early, that's off-putting to them. They don't like that idea. And I'm always scared though when a guy thinks that this is not going to be a lifelong issue, because we live in such a sexual place, and sex being a biological need in that all combinate, society's sexuality, your sexual needs, that all combined with any of your kind of maladaptive behaviors, it's something to keep your eye on for a long time, in my opinion.
It is. I think though that when we talk about recovery being so long term, this is not that struggle against sobriety this whole
Sure.
time.
Agreed.
That's not what we're talking about, generally speaking. Now that can pop up different times. This truly is about learning to live life differently. It's the same way with your audience to say, you're not a businessman anymore. I mean, you always are. That's what you're doing. Maybe you've changed industries. Maybe you've done this or that. You yourself have had a variety of different businesses, including now, and different focuses. But all of that is just in the crucible and in the container of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so long-term recovery is about really discovering and living into the integrity of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a vastly different conversation than don't look at porn today, don't whatever your thing is. Those are very, very different things that all the don'ts or even the do's, like do go to a meeting or do connect with, a supporter, accountability person or something. Those are still behavioral.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helpful. You need that. That's like learning the nuts and bolts of how do you read a financial statement. But that doesn't do anything for now, what do I do with all of this?
Mm-hmm.
And so the longer term is what I do with all of this.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that you said has piqued my interest here, which is this idea of this grief stage is maybe 6 to 9 months. BS. Grief is an ongoing long-term part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I have hugely learned in long-term recovery, that this grieving process, which sounds like a downer. And again, it's that grieving that gets you into your deepest heart of what's important to you. We grieve because something mattered. And so we get to grieve things that the world tells us, oh, you can't grieve that because it's wrong. Like there's an affair partner that I still grieve. This was someone who was important and special to me. Am I in contact with him? No. Am I going to be in contact with him? No. And at different times that comes to mind and I go, wow. And I thank my mama God, as I call my spiritual figure, for the positives of that. And I thank for everything I learned for that. And I thank that I'm now in a position of getting some of the needs that were met in that relationship in a way that jives with my integrity.
It's
that makes sense?
In my book, I have a chapter called Recovery is Not a Burden. And I often have said on this podcast over and over, if recovery is annoying to you and you want it to stop, you're doing it wrong. You are absolutely doing it wrong. It should not feel like a burden. It should feel, in our groups,
joy.
The guys count down the days to the call. We have this accountability app that we have on our phones. And right after the call, the app always blows up and everyone's always like, oh my gosh, that was such a great call. I love you guys so much. All that, I loved all the feedback today. They love it. We do retreats twice a year. They count down the days of the retreats. I have one coming up in 2 weeks and they're already messaging, coordinating, hey, let's all meet up and carpool together and go to this one. And, that's what recovery should be. It should be
exactly.
I can't wait to be more me. I can't wait to get these things out of my life that I don't want in my life. I can't wait to unlearn these things that people taught me that I don't even want to believe. It should be exciting, this new life on the horizon, right? It's not, and I think that's the challenge with sobriety and a little bit too much of that's why you don't hear me call this sex and porn addiction. I just call it process addiction, because I think when we zoom in too much, we're focusing on the wrong things. What's your process addiction that led to sexual things and porn use, right? Because it's probably not sexual, right? And so by zooming out and looking at how do I self-identify? What do I think of myself and what do I think of the world? That's recovery. Because if your self-concept, your identity is not enough yet, let's say, you will be in a position of potentially seeking validation because
Right.
you are wanting to know, hey, am I enough yet? Do you think I'm enough? How about you? Do you think I'm enough? And then how about you? Am I enough? If part of that's physical attraction and how suave you are, then, again, that's a problematic area to be. But to me, that's recovery is, what about me drove me to want to do those things, and how much are those things out of my life? And I'm going to go on the record here, and I've done this before, so this isn't the first time, but guys, I'm deep into my recovery, and I'll still tell you this right now. I crave attention. I crave validation. It is something that I am working on hard. I am still seeing my therapist weekly, but the way I was brought up, it did a number on me, and it's really hard for me to go through life knowing that I'm enough for me and not needs other people to be impressed by what I'm doing. And it's this ongoing struggle. And I know that it can get me into trouble. And so I'm never going to claim that I am recovered with an ED ending. I'm in recovery, and I'll be in recovery forever. I don't even like to call it recovery. I'll call it self-mastery. I think recovery comes with this, I think, has a little bit of a sad kind of negative tone to it because of how it's been tied to addiction. I like calling it self-mastery. I'm gonna master self and show up in an authentic way that I'm proud of, and leave a legacy that I'm proud of. And the cool thing is, the sexual behaviors are not part of that recipe. So rather than focusing on them, I just focus on how much of myself am I in control of. And how much am I still letting what others have taught me dictate how I'm going to act today? That's recovery to me. Has nothing to do with sex and porn. It has to do with, am I letting other things influence my behavior, or am I the one driving the ship? And to me, recovery is all about intentional living. And so, yeah, if you guys don't like recovery, cool, stop recovering and get into self-mastery instead.
Right. If recovery is about deprivation, then that will only trigger you into all of the deprivation and attachment breaches and unmet needs and wants of childhood for most of us. That's absolutely true. That's my story. That part of it, at least, that's true for me. And so I don't really think about being in recovery from sex and love addiction specifically either. Most of the time, for me, the frame has changed to I am always in process. I'm always a growing person. I am learning every day more how to thrive, and all of that brings me joy. And it started with this terrible thing called sexual abuse and problematic sexual behavior. But boy, what a launching pad. And today I'm grateful for that.
It's the way when you were talking about that, the way I kind of see it is, if I'm going to live my life differently, then I have to go back to why this happened, and I have to examine really the triggers that are going to keep presenting themselves. For example, I had a time, this was not that long ago, all 6 of my businesses were getting their butts kicked. And I've never had that before. Usually the nice thing I like about owning 6 is usually if they're getting their butts kicked, 3 of them are doing well. Okay. And so to have all 6 get their butts kicked for different reasons, I felt like a failure. I felt inadequate. I was working my face off. I could not get them to course correct. They just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So I felt like I was not enough I felt like my best wasn't enough. And then more importantly, because none of them were winning, I felt unappreciated, unseen, unaccomplished. And man, I will tell you what, all of those maladaptive pathways that led to my sex addiction were active. I mean, I felt like an addict again. Now, I didn't act on any of them, but man, I will tell you what, it was as high risk as it gets. I mean, I genuinely had thoughts of doing divorceable behaviors. I mean, I got that close. So I say this to every guy listening. That's the danger of being recovered and having this out of your life is it's all fun and games until you find yourself in a really difficult position. And then what? Right. And I think a lot of us all, in our right minds like to say, oh, no, I wouldn't do that back then. But again, you don't know until you're there,
Right.
and I would say you're not in your right mind when you're there. And so
Right.
I think to say that that's not going to happen is pretty naive, because we all know what we're capable of when we're in a super egoic state, and we're capable of a lot of things that we would never do in our right mind.
Right. I would agree with that. And it's not just looking at the triggers. Those challenges in business are the triggers, but it's looking at all the false core beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I believe with all my heart that these issues that some of us face and that can just absolutely destroy us aren't about whatever the specific issue is, just exactly as you've been saying. These are about deep core wounds. You don't just wake up and think, I'm not good enough. That comes from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just wake up and think, gosh, I really want to be, people pay me attention and I want to be valued. And all of that comes from somewhere. And mostly when we have challenges with those, it comes because those needs did not get met for us. So one of the things about long-term recovery that I mean of always being in process is to always be aware of those things and always be returning in deeper healing to those wounds. Mm-hmm. And I know at different times in my own journey, I would get really pissed off, frankly, that, oh my gosh, I got to go back to therapy. I thought I had dealt with this. I so want to be chosen stuff. And now here I am in this place again. And today I look at that like, you know what? I get to go back and get some additional help. I've remained off and on in counseling since I've entered this process at age 35. I get to heal a deeper way. It may be the same issue, but I'm now way at a different point in dealing with that issue. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. And again, for really driven people, for these very successful people, very capable, just really powerful people, to admit I'm still having some challenges with stuff I have already dealt with. Welcome to life. That's how it works. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Well, I think the thing too is, of all of my super successful friends, I mean, I would say 1 in 100 was driven by a genuine desire to scale and build whatever it was they were building. I would say the other 99 built it from a dark place, a place of inadequacy, a place of not enoughness, a place of, I don't want anyone to say anything bad about me ever again, a place of, I'll prove them wrong, I'll show them. That was a lot of mine. Was, the church I grew up in treated me like I was going to be some sort of degenerate, and I knew I wasn't. And so the next 30 years of my life was, I'll become more successful than all of your kids combined. And again, it's just, that's not healthy, if we look at that. So why do I bring that up? I bring that up because, well, for 2 reasons. One, a lot of high achievers don't think they are experiencing negative emotions. That, what I just said, is a negative emotion. But the second reason I bring this up is kind of like what you said before. Again, the reason that all 6 of my businesses getting their butts kicked was a trigger was because I need them. I need the success. I need to buy the things that I can with all of the money that they're going to make me to feel good, to feel okay. Right. To feel like they're not going to reject me, not want to hang out with me. And again, I think this is one of the complicated things about successful male culture is, and I hate this part about successful male culture. I really do. I hate it. It's so toxic, but it's true. And it happens all the time. When I became successful, Marnie, doors open. People wanted to come over to my house. People wanted me to come over to their house. People wanted to ride in my car. People wanted to see my wristwatch collection. People wanted, like, all of a sudden, people took interest in me now that I reached a certain level of success. And I think that's I hate that part about success because it validates something that in recovery we really would do better if it wasn't validated. Because again, a lot of the successful men struggle in recovery, and I don't think they know this, but a lot of their success was driven by egoic states of superiority, of dominance, power. And so a lot of them feel like, well, if I stop that, I won't be successful. And I kind of am on their side a little bit, because I see why they're drawing such a conclusion, because that was a very good observation. A lot of their success was driven from a place of hate, anger, spite, resentment. But here's what I would always propose to them is, man, if you've been this successful, full of hate, imagine how successful you're going to be when you're full of love.
And what I think too is that, yes, having the wealth and the success and all of that opens a lot of doors and draws people to you. But what's also true, see, is genuine presence, genuine integrity, genuine calm and serenity inside. That core of I am enough. And if all these 6 businesses tank, they tank. And I'll start over because I am enough. That kind of attitude draws a whole different kind of people who value you for you and not for all the money you make, or, y'all are comparing size of cars and bank accounts and all this kind of stuff. And so it has its own sweet reward. It's just different. But what also happens about that, Roland, is it makes you a better leader. It makes you more successful in some of these tangible, material, businessy kind of ways, because it's, again, coming from a place of presence. It's coming from a place of compassion, self-compassion, but compassion for other people. It's when you get off the power trip, then the way you view life and people and situations changes. I think that's part of what drives positive philanthropy. And part of it is, look at me, I've got my name on the, Red Cross building or whatever it is. But the genuine kind is that kind that nobody knows. It's that kind that is just doing good for the sake of doing good. So
I had this conversation with Troy Love. I don't know if you've met Troy.
Yeah.
I love Troy. I had this conversation with Troy. Troy was saying, and I really loved it, and it resonated with a lot of my audience. He was saying, what's real masculinity though? Like when you really, when you look at, like, as it's been studied, what is the masculine? And again, masculine is not, just for everybody listening, masculine is not male. Everybody has masculine and feminine traits and powers about them. It's an energy signature is the way I describe it. So just because masculine is not men, women can have bring a masculine energy signature in their leadership skills too. So it's an energy signature, not a gender issue. But Marnie, yeah, you're so true. When you look at what masculine energy signature really is, Troy was reading this thing to me, and I was listening to it, and it's so funny. It's like, I look at a lot of these entrepreneurs who are, in the spot, a lot of it is feminine. It's a lot of like, am I okay? It's a lot of, it's not masculine energy signatures. There's a lot of like fear, somebody nurture me, somebody notice me, somebody care for me, somebody, when you look at masculine energy signature, it's this silent leadership. It's this silent peace. It's the lion in the pack of, hey, everything's going to be okay. I got this. It's all right. You guys can go sleep. It's everything's going to be fine. It's not loud. It's not boisterous. It's not proving something. It's this quiet calmness of, hey, I hear you. And that's okay. I'm here. I got this. I'm going to do my best. And I liked when he brought that up, because it thought about 2 things. One, it thought about a leadership style that I aspire to. So when I'm looking at my own recovery, am I bringing that calm, certain, confident, peaceful, masculine energy signature to the room, or am I acting like a little boy who's afraid, right? But the other thing that it brought me up for the married men listening to this, Troy was actually bringing it up in this context of the betrayal dynamic. You know, a lot of the times once you and your wife are in a little bit more advanced recovery, let's call it post year one, you know, that's really a lot of it is testing you. You know, hey, if I tell you that I'm freaking out, are you going to bring that peace, that calmness, that, hey, we're in recovery. I'm here for you. I'm going to do everything I can. I'll be radically transparent, even if it's uncomfortable. Like, I'm going to show up in this masculine ownership way for you and for this family. You know, towards those later stages, you know, and again, I don't want to overgeneralize, because for people listening, this may not be what your wife's doing. She might not be testing you. She might just be pissed at you because you're acting like an a-hole. But, you know, there are some times where, you know, people are looking for that. And so that kind of came to my front of my brain, Marnie, when you mentioned that, because it is, to me, really, if you're going to go forward in this, it really is a call for some of that masculine certainty. And again, it's not, look how big my house is, masculine certainty. It's, I'm going to be okay no matter what. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, that's, to me, that's real confidence. Is I could lose all my net worth and I'm still going to be me, and I'm okay with that, because no one could take me from me. That right there is, you know, for me in my recovery, that's what I aspire to.
I hear that. And a part of me agrees with all of that. I'll be honest, I'm having a little bit of a reaction. Feminine energy is kick-ass strong. Real, you know, if you have been with a woman who is giving birth, there is nothing stronger than that. I've done that twice with natural childbirth. And so I think our culture says, you know, the emotions is the feminine energy, right, and all that kind of stuff.
Strong,
and
right.
And I get my hackles up about that. I'll tell you. I think what we're looking for is a whole integrated self that has that strength and that protection and those kinds of things, that is fully in touch with emotion and fully in touch with compassion and very aware of needs and more of a genuine interweaving and marriage of all the different
parts. I agree that I think where it all went wrong was when we assigned gender to it, and not because again, you know, the real leader has room for both. He's okay, he's calm, he's confident, he knows who he is, and he knows that no one can take him from him. And then the real leader, who simultaneously holds feminine energy signatures, also has room for the pain and suffering of others, has and you know, himself. Wants to crawl into the hole, and himself, correct, and self-compassion, you know, wants to crawl in the hole with those who are suffering, because he has room for it, right? And I think that's, you know, I think you need both. I think you do need both in order to have the certainty and bravery to crawl into the hole of someone else's suffering. I think you have to have the masculine energy signature to create room for you to bring the feminine energy in, and, you know, hold that space for somebody who needs it, and hold that space for yourself. You know, that ignoring emotions, we all know where that leads us, right? Absolutely. And again, I think I would say some of the best leaders offer up more of a feminine energy signature than a masculine energy signature, depending on who you're leading in the organization that you're running. I mean, all my leaders of all my companies are females. I tried the male thing. Oh my gosh, I've tried it in so many different ways. It never works. They always want to do their agenda, and all the women that I hire are fine running my agenda, and then calling me out when I'm violating my own agenda. Whereas like the men, they're just like, wait till Roland's out of the room so I can I can do whatever I want. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, and this is more kind of personal with your own journey, is, you know, as we're talking about long-term recovery and how one maintains that, there's this other element, Marnie, of, I don't know, how do I say it? Overconfidence, or, you know, as you're starting to get in some of those later stages, what kind of mindset do you have to maintain so that you're not, I don't know, getting yourself into trouble? Because I do think later stage recovery does take a bit of a different outlook than it did in the first 2 years. You know, the first 2 years is a lot of freaking out. It's a lot of learning. It's a lot of crisis and damage control. But as you go beyond that, and you're going to stay married, because I think that's the goal of a lot of the men in my group. What's that look like? And you have far more experience than me. You've been doing this yourself for a really, really long time, but you've also been surrounded by people who have been trying to do this for a really long time. If you had to describe, what's the difference between that long-term recovery outlook versus a short-term recovery outlook?
First, I think long-term recovery is way past year 2 or something. I mean, we're talking, I don't think you're remotely getting there before a good many years beyond that. But I just think it's a different focus. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that clawing for sobriety and putting out all the fires of all the havoc that has been wreaked, and trying to build something back together again. It's the focus now is it's a much more stable internal landscape, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, within a relationship, there's a lot more healing and stability and those kinds of things. And so the focus changes again into positive growth rather than negative dealing with all the consequences. But I think the focus also grows into deeper humility,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and into deeper gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
and into deeper, real connections with other healthy people. So it's a difference between putting out the fires and planting a garden.
Yeah, no, that's so well said. As I was reflecting on my own recovery, when things really shifted into a, I don't want to say effortless place, but a place that required much less effort, I would agree with you there. I think it for me, it felt like I'd really untethered from the behaviors. I didn't, in the beginning, I was so entangled in them. I took them personally. My wife took them personally. It was as much as we're trying not to do that. There's just a lot of that. It's everything was so personal, on both ends, for my wife and for me. And I think it's cool later on because it becomes less personal. And I think when it becomes less personal, it becomes a lot easier to, it comes a lot easier to be. So much of my thoughts now are less about the addiction and being scared of all the things that I can't do and tiptoeing around and navigating landmines. And, I don't really think about that now. I have a sense
Right.
of calm about, will I presented with something? Yeah, probably. In the world we live in today, I think assuming that you
Sure.
won't is naive. But but I'm not worried about it. It's
Right.
like I'm going to be prepared for the day that it comes. I'm going to acknowledge that it could come at any moment in time, and knowing how life works, it's probably going to come at me when I'm at the most vulnerable,
Vulnerable.
when I'm at
Right.
the most vulnerable position.
Right.
So I think that's what it is. I'm no longer scared and freaked out. I just know that, yeah, I'm not out of the woods. I may never be out of the woods. And then if I do think I'm out of the woods, it's probably when I'm going to realize that I'm not, I'm not out of the woods. But I hold all of that and I'm calm with it. Here's the way I describe it. Am I doing, of the principles that I know someone like me needs to do with my own process addiction, am I doing those things? And again, I think Marnie and I aren't trying to tell anybody what to do with your recovery, but I think if all of us are honest about it, for me personally, I need to be having deep, connected, vulnerable conversations with other men. Because if I go away from that to kind of like our earlier discussions, then we start to have gender norms come in. Then I start feeling like it's not cool to talk about my feelings. And I start to, I kind of regress into those. So again, for me, long-term recovery, a lot of it is what principles and practices can I inject into my life that I know keep me taking 2 steps forward for every 1 step back that, life is pulling me back. I'm a lot more calm and I'm just marching forward. But I just want everybody to know, in no way it's an out of sight, I'm out of mind. I mean, I have those things on my calendar. And if I feel like I'm not getting as much out of therapy anymore, I'm going to switch and find another therapist. But I'm really I'm hyper vigilant, but at the same time, it's not as annoying as that sounds. I'm just hyper vigilant because I know that relapse is a thing that happens to people, and I really don't want it to happen to my wife and I. And so I carry this thing around in my pocket like a cell phone or a wallet or something. It's just,
It's an awareness.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that the way I always say it is the pros heavily outweigh, the pros heavily outweigh the cons. I've even said, if my wife needed to, she doesn't do this anymore because it's unhealthy for her recovery, but yeah, she needed to spy on me for the rest of my life. I mean, hey, if that prevents me from acting out, then throw a GPS tracker on my car forever. I mean, in the end, I'm not, I just want to stay married to her. Now, she doesn't do that because she wants to be in healthy recovery, and she wants to be able to do what I want to do. And she wants to leave me if I'm somebody that she doesn't want to be with. And so she doesn't want to spy on my behavior. But I think that's kind of how I would phrase it is I've kind of relaxed about all of it. But at the same time, I also wouldn't say that I'm any less vigilant than I was up on day one. It's just been a lot easier to be vigilant. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's because you've learned to do life differently. It's just all about continuing doing life differently. I want to highlight something that you said. It is, I mean, it's what you're devoting lots of energy to at the moment. Just how important is the deep, intimate connection with other people. And generally speaking, whether one identifies as heterosexual or gay, we need our same gender connections. And that is just, we need community. We're made for relationship. I believe with all my heart that we are hardwired for relationship. That's part of my own spiritual belief system, relationship with God. But we're also made for relationship with other people. And long-term recovery is about fostering those kinds of relationships, which look very different than the typical business relationship. I mean, maybe you're still doing business on the golf course or at some high-end restaurant or something. And that's fine. But there are also those very genuine person-to-person relationships that is really the antidote to all of the core soup that drives the inappropriate behavior.
Well, and I want to speak to that too, because I think this was me too, a very common misconception, especially amongst successful men. They typically are charismatic, extroverted, outgoing, confident. When I heard that this was an intimacy disorder and that I had connection issues, I almost spit out my coffee because I'm like, I speak on stage, I take selfies with people, like I do not have connection issues. I am constantly around people all the time. I don't have, well, here's the thing that I learned though, Marnie, and I shouldn't say all, but I would say out of the 60 clients I have 6 groups of 10. Out of the 60 clients, I would say 59 of the 60 all would agree with what I'm about to say, which is if you're only presenting safe, risk-free information, that's not connection.
Right.
Because I used to always say, oh, I'm vulnerable, I'm an open book. I used to always say that. And I feel so stupid saying that now because no, I was not. But I was vulnerable. I would tell people my weaknesses, but only the ones that are cool.
That are acceptable.
I wouldn't tell them about my sexual behavior. Absolutely, that wouldn't come up. I wouldn't tell them
how
about
lonely you are.
I wouldn't tell them about my wife saying, "Hey, I don't feel like your priority often." Right? I don't want them to know that my wife says that about me. I don't want them to know about my compulsive sexual behavior. I don't want them to know that I was arrested at the age of 14 because of my compulsive sexual behavior. I don't want people to know that. And so I'm kind of going back to what Marnie's saying. I just want every successful guy listening to this. I have learned this, and I hope everyone hears me. That was not connection. And so if I'm constantly presenting to them only the convenient, safe information that I know already ahead of time. I know me saying this, it's not going to go poorly. Like they're going to say, wow, that's great I know they're going to compliment me. Wow, that's so great self-awareness, Roland. And then that's going to, again, right? If I know for sure that they are going to embrace it and celebrate me, that's not vulnerability. What I came to realize with this, and a lot of it's just watching in our groups, these friendships, the guys all say it. I've never had friendships like this.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Like, I've never gone in a room where I tell people things that I was hoping no one would ever know. And then we talked about to be loved after you share it more.
Right.
That's the coolest part. And again, here's why I think it actually does it, maybe not forever, but for a portion of time, Marnie, I do think it needs to be done with sex addicts.
Yes, for sure.
There's something about this area that when you disclose this stuff to other people who have done it, and then they embrace you afterwards, you can't talk about this stuff with the general pop, not yet. I hope we're getting close there, but when you tell somebody that you have slept with prostitutes, that the general population, as it stands today, there's a good potential that there's going to be some judgment after you say that. And that's where I think I would advise guys to find other sex addicts, because you are going to pick up on that and you're going to hold back. And if you hold back, that's the core of the problem. That's the core of what Marnie and I are talking about. If there's something that and you're like, well, I'll tell everybody, but that, again, it's still connection-ish, but man, real connections saying, I'm going to say whatever. And if this person doesn't want to touch me or see me ever again after I say this, then so be it. I don't want to be their friend anyways, then, if that's how they're going to treat people. That's what you can get with a community of other like-minded sex addicts, is you can come and you can say it all. I've had guys who will say it all, but there's one little thing they're not saying because they're really ashamed. And then finally on the last day, they'll stand up and say, hey, Roland, hey, before we start, can I tell you something that I didn't tell you guys? And it happens, Marnie, it happens every other retreat. The last day, they're like, hey, I don't want to leave with this on my chest. I want to get this off. And then they'll say it. And I get why they were scared, because it definitely was on the abnormal scale, probably higher up on the abnormal scale. But again, we know who that person is. And we know that the fact that he's so scared to tell us shows us that he really regrets that this was part of his recipe. And I just wanted to go on that little rant, because Marnie, did not get into good connection. I went to meetings and I went to some breakfasts, but I was not connecting with these men, and I was not getting the benefit to my sobriety. Remember, connection is not just being in the room with them and sharing when it's your turn. Connection is so much more than that. And I just want to emphasize that, guys, if you don't have that, you need it. It is just, nothing's worked more magic for my recovery and long-term recovery than having a tribe of guys to just really lean on through this.
Right. I couldn't agree more. That's real connection. All the rest is show and bravado.
Well, and just to give guys an explanation as to why it doesn't work, it's because it's a show and it's a show. And
they know it's a show.
That's
and everybody's in the show.
Yeah. Well, even if you're able to fool them, because a lot of my clients are able to fool people. And even if you are able to fool them, that they're in love with the performance, and you are carrying the belief, whether you know it or not, you're carrying this simultaneous belief that, well, if I really told them all of the vulnerability, and that's a hard one for us to grasp, because a lot of these guys have been hiding a lot of this for so long that they've kind of forgot that they're hiding it. But again, your psyche hasn't forgot that you're hiding it, right? And you'll pay the consequences. So, Marnie, one final thing to say to these guys and gals listening. Long-term sobriety, you got to say one thing to them to flip a switch. What would you say to somebody who wants to be in sustainable long-term recovery?
To flip the switch, gosh, that's a lot of pressure. I'm going to sidestep that one. I
Sure.
would just say what I've said before. There is such beauty and joy and serenity and success in the core of who you are to do
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
differently.
Mhm.
And all of the success of the highly successful people is actually very often a detriment
Mhm.
to getting at this very centered, calm place of integrity.
Mhm.
And you do need other people who understand the world the way you do, and the pressures and all of those kinds of things. And when you can be really intimate and vulnerable with those folks, now you're getting somewhere.
Sure. Mhm.
Um, and and it's just so worth it. It
Mhm.
is just absolutely worth it. And
Yeah,
for
I
me,
like
all of this is the spiritual journey. It's
I like that. The way what came from mind to me, and I had a different thing I was going to say, but I'm going to change it to piggyback off that because I so agree. You know, guys, if you were, statistically, a bulk of you listening are still married. If your wife decided, nope, I'm divorced, would you keep doing what you're doing in your recovery? And really be honest with that. Like, would you? And it's been really interesting in our programs. We've had, I think, in the history of me doing this, I think we've had 2 divorces, and it's been so cool to see the guy leaning in just as hard or harder, even though his marriage is going to end. To me, now again, I'm not saying get divorced. What I'm saying is that that's if you're wondering, am I in good long-term recovery? I think that's kind of the measure is like, what's the motive? I mean, if the motive
right.
is, oh, I have to do this for my wife, or, oh, I'm just doing this so that she, or even if you're just doing it so that you don't cheat on your wife again, is that even sustainable long-term recovery? Right? Like, that, as you were talking, have you found joy in a different way of being to the point where you would keep doing it whether you were perfectly sober forever or not? Even if I knew, hey, I will never act out again, would you still lean into kind of this connection with yourself and with others, right? I love that you said that, because I do. That's, to me, if you're going to rely on your recovery, I like that. I think if you've really fallen in love with your own humanity and the humanity of others, I think it's going to be really hard to dehumanize people and objectify them. That's so well said. Thank you, Marnie. Well, if people are trying to read about, because I know you're retired, I can't believe it.
I
Oh my
am
goodness.
retired. I love
If
it.
people are going to absorb any of your work, is what options do we have now that you're out of the game?
I'm still on the board and sharing my story with Bethesda Workshops,
Mm-hmm.
the clinical program, also a ministry, a Christian-based organization that I founded in 1997 and directed until 2024. So BethesdaWorkshops.org is a great place. You can Google me. I continue to blog through Bethesda
Oh,
Workshops
cool.
once a month.
Cool.
Just miscellaneous Marnie musings. Just
I love that.
whatever's. I'm thinking about at the moment the mockingbird that has built a nest in my front porch. I'm just miscellaneous stuff and different observations or lessons or something that
Well,
I'm
Marnie,
creating
I
for them.
love that. It's so cool to have a guest with no other agenda other than to just share your story and help others. It's so nice. You bring such a cool energy, and I'm so excited to see you in person here in 2 months.
Yeah, conference in Nashville
I
area.
know,
So
I'm excited. Well, thank you for your time today, Marnie.
thank you. I'm so glad to be with you.